I'm going to talk about how to solve the very common UX dilemma. My name is Magnus Westerberg. I previously worked as an experience director for large corporations, and now I do the same thing, but as a consultant. And I'm also an associate trainer here with We Are Movement. And I will just beg all of your pardon in advance because there's so much pollen in the air today. So makes me almost like asthmatic, so I don't get any air. And if you ask if that's a problem, I'll answer, well, only when I talk. So what we're going to talk about? Well, you know how what we sometimes forget about is that customer experience in itself is a competitive advantage, of course, and creating value. And what do we mean by that? Well, we're so used to talking about, delivering features, delivering function, that sometimes we forget that CX in itself is also, at least from the business side of view, a feature. It's quite common today, actually, that companies or apps or services that share exactly the same features, but have different UXs have a huge value gap, i.e. the better UX is creating much more value. But still, many companies struggle with this common UX dilemma. And I wonder if you might know what it is. It has to do with that clock here, time to market, cost of delay, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very common. So we wonder here then, okay, how do we go further? How do we kind of address these things? Well, first of all, like Carl said earlier, let's look at the problem. What is the different situations? Well, a small thing here. On Monday, it's okay to do puns. So puns are forbidden any other day, but on Mondays we have here with my colleagues, it's okay to do puns. And also this is a bit of a, we're going to talk about prototypes later. But so sometimes, this is one of the problems. Sometimes design isn't fully included in the framework or how it's implemented. And it's a bit like Peter talked about earlier, that if you have, it's the same thing. It's like having an organization that works in two different modes. And one dichotomy is actually between design and other things is quite usual. And I guess you all recognize that for some organizations, that either it's not come to that yet, they were not included, the designers to begin with, or they still, it's like they work in their own way. But it can also come from the design point of view. Sometimes, designers still live in the world where they are kind of, the hero myth, the artist. We know what's right. We don't want to hear some strange, don't ruin a good story with the truth, right? And this is sometimes that something that the UX history also has to deal with, because in the noughties, when all of this started, UX became kind of a, quote unquote science, and was very rigid in many ways, and didn't kind of realize how fast the digital world was evolving. Of course, still is, but just a basic thing like interaction patterns for desktop compared to touch, right? Changes everything. Another problem is this thing with the design system. So a lot of the times you will hear that both from the business side or the branding side of a company or an organization, or from the designers or a combination, they want to do the design system first. And what do we have here? Well, we have a huge kind of, design ahead. We have cost of delay, doing this thing first before other things can be done. Not good. And sometimes an even more easier problem, so to speak, but very common, is that there's not enough designers to go around to all the teams. That's a very common reality. So what to do? This, regardless of the problems, the end result is the same. We get bottlenecks for customer experience. And you've all been to groomings where the most common blocker is that, no, we don't have UX for this story. So Okay, what can we do? What can we do? Well, there are some things from the reality that we could check up on. Well, one solution that's quite common and that I've seen working is that you have too few designers, but then let's make them ambulate, i.e. walk around to the different teams. So they know that on Monday and Tuesday, these two or this designer works with Team X. Team X knows this, the Scrum Master knows this, etc., etc. You can plan for it. You can know when you're looking at stories and resources that, yeah, Monday and Tuesday we'll have design. Excellent. And this could be a workaround that actually works. So the team is cross-functional those days. Another thing is to look at design as an infrastructure, like other infrastructures, like, you know, how do we share code? Do we use GitHub, et cetera, et cetera? We can, and the crucial part here is to develop that infrastructure together with developers and not as a design-only exercise. And that, so that all the teams have always access to assets that they need. Or they can then, you know, if they lack assets, that could be something that has to be done. Of course, we also have, this is almost what Carl described, a design sprint. This is a good way of kind of making a sort of boosted design work around a certain topic. For instance, when you have your epics, you can do a design sprint, and then you have the team, everybody from the team is in the design sprint and get to work with design thinking and mapping and empathizing with the customer, et cetera, et cetera. And also, of course, testing the prototype at the end of the design sprint and getting feedback from real customers. And the good thing with that is, of course, that you kind of, yeah, that becomes something that you then get used to, having these learning loops and taking in stuff from the customers. And another thing is, of course, these design systems, debatch them, make smaller units that you can and let them grow organically and work together with the development teams. That is a crucial thing to do, because design systems are good, but if you do them as a kind of one-off and big thing in the beginning of an initiative, you all know what that is. But debatching design system also has the opportunity to have these learning moments within building the design system and evolving the design system, a bit like Google released Material U last week for all those Android users out here in the rooms. Yes, do we have any ideas for other solutions? Here, this was some of the examples that I've seen in reality, but there might be others. There is one that is very obvious, of course, very, very obvious, and that is hire more designers. I mean, it's kind of, why is it that design becomes this bottleneck, that we have too little resources within that area? Well, sometimes it's because there is an engineering perspective to what is supposed to be done. So you kind of hire more developers and fewer designers because you don't think about it in those terms, that you don't really make the teams fully cross-functional. Any other experiences that you might have? Happy to share and talk about those later after all the speeches have been done. So let's talk later about how to have other ideas around solving the UXCX dilemma. Thank you.